Forge Through is a wonderful program for military veterans, police, emergency service workers and first responders, both current and past, who may be struggling with mental health issues. It provides a chance for these folks to unplug from the world for a couple of days and learn something about the ancient art of knife forging from the program's creator, Dean Hammo Hamilton. For the past 4 summers, graduates of Forge Through and others touched by this program have gathered at the recreational fishing haven of St George's Basin near Nowra in southern New South Wales for a half-day social fishing competition. Participants are teamed up with local and visiting boaters who freely provide their vessels and their expertise for the event. Activities commence with a very informal briefing at around 6:30am when Dean outlines the competition's simple rules and objectives, most of which are about having fun and sharing some quality time together on the water. Forge Through's fishing days are extremely well supported by a long list of generous sponsors, and all the non-boaters receive a gift pack along with their necessary scoring paperwork to record their catches. Then it's onto the boats and out onto the waters of the basin to begin fishing at 7am. In 2020, the weather was a little unsettled with scattered rain squalls, but that didn't seem to dampen anyone's enthusiasm, especially when depth sounder screens were lighting up with masses of bait like this. My wife Jo had teamed up with former policeman Brian Ware, and it wasn't long before they pinned their first scoring fish, one of the basin's abundant dusky flathead. It was no monster, but they all count.
We're on the board.
Each catch is measured. It's up to participants if they'd like to take home a meal, but most are released. With so much bait around, it's hardly surprising that a few decent tail are also turned up. Brian was fishing a small soft vibe which he regularly spiced up with a little S-Factor scent. As he fired out his next cast, another rain squall whipped through, and as it did, our sounder screen suddenly revealed some much bigger targets. I was hardly surprised when Brian found himself hooked up to a heavy, powerful opponent. There's no mistaking those angry head shakes and surging runs. This was quite obviously a jewfish or mulloway, and Brian had his work cut out for him on light flathead gear and a 10-pound leader. Joe stood by with the big landing net and used our electric motor to stay as close as possible to the rampaging fish. As the heavens opened and the rain pelted down even harder, Brian did an awesome job of fighting this dogged fish, which repeatedly dived directly under the boat, putting a serious bend in that flathead and brim rod. Constant direction changes demanded some fancy footwork by Brian on several occasions in order to keep the line clear of the motors and hull, but he kept his cool beautifully. Eventually we saw that chrome flash that never fails to make your knees go weak. The fish was lightly pinned and came up at an awkward angle, but Joe doesn't make too many mistakes on the net, and a moment later, tension turned to elation. The hooks came out easily as the dewey croaked or drummed loudly, a characteristic of the species, and this beautiful fish measured just on a metre in length. But Brian had no hesitation at all in deciding to release it. First, Joe inserted a little plastic DPI Fisheries Research tag under the base of its second dorsal fin. Then there was just enough time for a couple of quick happy snaps to share with family, friends and colleagues.
That's it. Make sure you smile at me.
And a cheeky little grin for the camera. What a gorgeous fish. No wonder chasing them is so addictive. After less than a minute on board, Brian eased the dewey back into the water and held it gently as it revived. Having been pulled from a depth of 9 metres, the mulloway had suffered a mild case of pressure-related barotrauma, but it quickly recovered and let Brian know it was ready to go.
Nice work! Oh, mate, well done. What do you reckon about that?
Bloody awesome.
Incredibly, the rain stopped and the sun came out almost as soon as we released the dewey. The fishing also slowed, although Jo was able to add a nice little snapper to her team's tally, something that's not at all unusual in the basin. Despite it being over the state's legal length, Jo was more than happy to let her pinky go too. Meanwhile, back on shore, Wes Murphy's Wandering Woodfire Oven team, another of the day's sponsors, were hard at work cooking up a swag of delicious pizzas for the hungry crew. And I suspect the mouth-watering aromas wafting out across the water had some teams pulling stumps before the noon cut-off time. Scorecards were handed in and carefully tallied, and it quickly became obvious that some lovely fish had been caught by many of the competing teams, although Brian's dewey would be hard to top.
All right, can everyone hear me well enough? Right, first of all, thanks everyone for coming today. Thanks to boaters once again, as every year, giving their time, donating their equipment, donating the use of their boats to help out some other guys. All the veterans and first responders, thanks for turning up, coming down, taking advantage of what we're trying to put on for everyone. It's been a fantastic day.
And there were some fantastic prizes too, thanks to those generous sponsors. Although I get the feeling most of these folks had still come along, even if there was nothing up for grabs apart from smiles and a pat on the back. This day and Forge Through's program is really about being there to support one another in the good times and the bad. A sentiment Dean summed up beautifully.
It's really, really important. We do this not to try and change the world, but to try and change the world for a couple of people. All right, if everyone just extends their hand to someone they know, if they've gone a bit quiet, they've gone a bit off the radar, might be a phone call or a reach out or come for a fish or do something like that can make the difference.
If you'd like to make a difference, you can support Forge Through by becoming involved or by suggesting a potential program participant. Find out more at www.forgethrough.org. And if this program has raised any personal issues, please call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Take care of yourselves and of each other, and tight lines.